Okay, some of the problems that you will encounter will ask you to put it in what we call general form. Now, each textbook will have its own certain way of handling general form. So I'm going to step you through the three different versions of general form that some textbooks use. Now, in any case, it's where the x and y variables are on the same side. Now, the last case is what some people would say that's general form. Although some textbooks, especially with the online homework, tend to allow sometimes other versions than the most strict one. So I'm going to step you through the steps of putting it in general form. And again, some textbooks will call one thing general form, and then a little bit more lenient. And so we're going to start with the most lenient case first, which actually is what your textbook that we're currently using does. And so let's consider an example, and we'll see how to put an equation into this general form, both for your textbook and then also in general terms in case you eventually have another class, another textbook where it's treated a little bit differently. So the first thing we want to have our equation in general form is the x's and y's there need to both be on the same side. So that means I could move the y over, but then I'd need the number term on the other side. I'd have to move that. So I'm just going to move the x term over. Since I have 3/5 x, I'm going to begin by subtracting that from both sides. Now, negative 3/5 x and y are not like terms, so they won't go together. So you could write that down as y minus 3/5, but since the format has x first, I'm going to put that piece first. Negative 3/5 x plus y equals 2/5. And so that's the most lenient form of general form. And again, some people would say that that's not even general form, but that is what your textbook does. So if you're just worried about how to do the problem as far as the homework, how to answer those questions, then that's actually all the further you have to go. Move the x term over from the results that we have, and then you have your equation in the format that's acceptable for the homework. Now, going further, general form originally was developed so that you could write equations without fractions, because that's how you had to type things into computers before, or even going back further than that, type them on a typewriter or typesetting to print a book. It was really difficult to deal with fractions, so we usually get rid of the fractions. And so that's step 2. No fractions are allowed. Now remember from when we were solving equations that we can get rid of fractions by multiplying both sides of the equation by our common denominator. In this case we have just the one denominator, 5. So we can multiply everything by 5. So 5 times the negative 3/5 x plus 5 times the y equals 5 times the 2/5. And when I was multiplying by a fraction, I went ahead and I wrote that as 5 over 1. And so we would simplify here. In the first fraction, the 5's will cancel and you'll just have a minus 3x. And then a 5y. And then in the last fraction there, the 5's will cancel again and we'll just have a 2. So we get negative 3x plus 5y equals 2. And this is the general form that some textbooks will require us to have no fractions. And personally, as general form goes, I kind of like that one. But then there is a third version, the most strict version. And that most strict version requires that the coefficient of the x can't be negative. I'm not really sure why that was put into play, but that was the format. So we had an extra step we have to deal with. That means right now our x term's negative. So we need to make that not negative. And the way we do that is by multiplying the whole equation by a negative 1. Multiply the whole equation by a negative 1. Because what that's going to do is actually change the sign on each one of those things. So we get 3x minus 5y equals negative 2. And so that's the most strict version of general form that a lot of old algebra books did. maybe even some current ones as well. Again, for our class right now, Form 1 is good enough. Form 1 is good enough for the questions that they ask. Okay, so hopefully this helps you with understanding general form. Until next time.